Hello everyone. Today's talk will be called Riders of the Abyss, and what it really means is that there are moments where we find certain glances that are immeasurable into the distance, and so you look at the distance and you see nothing there, and so the void is looking back at you. And when you look at the void, in that immeasurable distance, there is an observance that occurs when you're confronted with a moment where there is a deep I don't know. When you have the sense of I don't know, you will realize that the tools of your trade are every memory, every form, shape, imagery you have. And so as you are riders into the abyss, you are riding because you have seen what is around you, and now you're moving with a greater intent into your expansion. If you're not aware of the collective sense of how you're, in a sense, being expressed, your individuality will always feel incomplete. And so it's not that your individuality has to feel complete. I mean, this dimension has to be the way it is. It has to be as graceful as how we can leave, for example, a flower be. You know, you must learn from the flower, not just in your realm. You can see that how stillness really gives you the ability to move between dimensions, but as long as you're moving inside the dimension as something present in that dimension, you're in the frame of mind you are. You need to realize Mr.Within right now is talking about the abstract. When you talk about the abstract, when you talk about the unknown, in a sense, all that can happen is more reclarification of your knowing. So me and you are both riding into the abyss. And as we ride into the abyss of man's deeper thought, we see that the way we have been extracting meaning can also be different. So the way we can understand things can shift as our awareness to our environment shifts. So when we see that flower simply in the soil, we do not try to take it out. And similarly, you do not try to, in a sense, escape, mortality or try to become immortal like some men have. And you need to, in essence, be very clear on how you are engaging life, because it needs to be untouched for you to recognize your essence as untouched. If you're touching everything, if you're externally moving things to figure out internally what's up, without that self-observance, there is no step you can take further than your illusion, because you're not looking anywhere else. So it's very important to have this clarity and to see that when you ride to the abyss, you're not alone. All mankind is walking into the unknown every day. Every morning I wake up, I could be so convinced of what's going to happen tomorrow, but again, there's something new about the day. You cannot go throughout your day without a spark of madness or something new. That's the nature of the mind. You are constantly learning from things, but you're not bringing it into conscious view. So then you feel like you have a lot to share, but you really don't know what it is. So you need to be aware of who you are, and who you are means before you picked up that brush, who were you? And you would see when you think about, when people tell you remember who you are, they are saying simply follow your memory to a degree where you begin remembering also your collective acknowledgements. So let's say, for example, before a child is born, he's a collective acknowledgement, collective acknowledgement, collective acknowledgement. Now a very intense aspect of it is choosing to be in the forms that it comes in. And so that is how geometry is relevant. So geometry, we, for example, looked at the cells, and many people who've looked at sacred geometry have found similarities between life's process and how the flower of life, for example, opens up. So when we look at this, we must not forget the certain dimensions of knowing that are present in let's say higher energy work. What that means is that, for example, there's some individual ways of acknowledging energy, for example, as this being this being this. There are ways of acknowledging energy where you are it. So you will recognize that you have just become as much of a keeper of reality as your plane of existence. So the plane is actually your body. It's a part of you, because your greatness is beyond the limitations of just that. And so we go to a crossroad where we see on one dimension, in one way, the mind is trying to break itself to find something new, and in one other way, the mind is completely getting rid of itself to find something new. And so we have the path of emptiness, and we also have the path of transformation. And these two meet, because the way they meet is that they both lead to the same state. So they're ladders up to the same elevation. So you will see that stillness accompanies silence. Noise accompanies movement. That's why when you're, very pleasantly, let's say, sitting on the park and somebody suddenly shouts, you totally hear that imbalance. You will see that what is real to you, you are in a sense immediately there, then dissolving back to where you are. So how I can say this is that, for example, I have a sense of realness based on how I'm standing here. It's real for me that I have a physical body. It's real for me that I have a voice, for example. It's real for me that I'm here. Now, imagine this sense of reality, okay? It's based on idea. There are some thoughts for rationality, but we keep the thoughts certain. We hold the thoughts there, similar to that electron in that observer effect. So you will see that because you're keeping it there, your sense of identity is a conception which is being put in the cup of how you were conditioned in the moment. So once that cup is full, it reaches transformation. Once that cup is empty, it also reaches the awareness of a greater sense of being, which is, that it was never the cup or the water in it. It was always more. It was always that relationship in which heaven and earth always looked at one another beautifully. You would see that the grace of the dimensions is simply how you're acknowledging the dimension based on the simplest thing in your dimension. So what that means is that if we're looking at things in a physical context, what's the most simplest physical image? And then from that simplicity, you get the trust and the same amount of knowing as you know yourself in other realities which then you work with. Because if that reality is not with you, you're not a part of it. And you need to see in this multidimensional sense of navigation, especially from the station of human being, human form, is that human form cannot transition into greater observance without awareness of yourself. So if you don't look at yourself, you're totally missing something. So if you go throughout this whole life and all your questions are coming from the outside world, you're not internally asking, what are you? What's your essence? Who am I? What is the nature of man? What is the light of my eyes? If you're not asking these, then you will see you're not pulled towards curiosity. And for some people, that is okay. Not everyone's here, for example, to learn all the sciences and all the philosophies and whatnot. Many people are here simply to know where they are. And when you know where they are, you become a complete moment. And a complete moment is not different for anyone. Everyone has the same moment of being as existence. So it's very important to look in that way, because if you do not allow yourself some things, you will not receive some things. And so it will be a limited sense of reception which you're just allowing. So why not allow better sense of reception? Now, you will see that when I first was observing not just my surroundings, but my thoughts, the thoughts that surrounded me as well, or the thoughts I associated with, it's not that something is associating with thought, just so you know. It's not as if like one shape is associating with another shape, so you're actually that shape. You are an observance as natural as the sky. It's as if like you're just this presence, you're present. It is the present moment that is observing the transition of this reality. And it is because you will see that the moment is a vehicle for many beings to intensely push. So it becomes not a game, but an involvement which in its co-creation, other beings in a sense awaken to themselves. So the mirror of life is simply an energetic relationship. In other words, in some relationships, man cannot even be self-aware because you're tuning into a different dimension of presence. And sometimes you see you have the ability, in other words, man's mind is more advanced than machinery. Because in an instant you see something, or I tell you something, you can understand it, and so worlds open up by mere communication. So when worlds open up by mere communication, before man can seek any other form of communication, he has to simply understand human communication. And human communication is not really human, it's existential, it's natural, it's a life process. It is your choice to consider that there's a separate world by creating the word world. Man created that word. But now he's saying his wisdom and his greater understanding ability lies in the silence of his being. And so how do we go from a talking world where culture's just shouting things at you, society's shouting things at you, everything's shouting things at you, and we don't even want to listen because we want to be somewhere else. We should have such an efficient society and culture. And not just even culture, because culture is different, but eventually it will globalize. But when you see man, you want to see man at its best. And its best is usually done by a comparison, but it's also done by the comparison of getting man out of measurement, out of your comparison. Because if your mind is conditioned to say this bench is good because it's based on that bench, you're always looking for more things in the sense that you're not clearly seeing the value of the thing in front of you. And so a simple man can walk through the most complex gates. Because it is where simplicity in any realm or dimension simply shows the way out. What that means is that you want to try to get a more complex sense of physical reality, try to think about it in many ways. Divide it up in your mind first and then let all those thoughts divide up everything else. And simply see what happens when you hold exponents beside your head, You, in a sense, need to recognize the vastness of your being is very useful when you see what the vastness of your acknowledgement is. Many people are born in this life and they don't have moments of conscious acknowledgement because we have not created a language that allows. Our language is still that strict headmaster which hits us in the hand if it does not follow rationality. There are certain words that make you look at life very curiously. Because why is there a need for imagery in words that demonstrate? Why is there symbology that is irrelevant? We need to learn to work with our holographic projection to see that the values in our reality don't have to just be these values. It is our eyes that are giving value. So how valuable is our gaze? Where is Mr. Within? And so these existential questions make you involved with your dimension of presence so integratively that you don't need to move in all the movements that you're doing. So a man sees that when you have a helicopter, don't try to beat the helicopter. Do you know what I mean? You just look at it and you simply walk, right? You will see that the person who's behind in a race, if he simply changes where the start and end line, if start and finish line is, in a sense he in a sense is closer to his destination. So the law of reflection, or it's not even a law, the concept of self-reflection shows you very accurately who you are and who you can be and what there is about you that's missing. Because when you look at life, life doesn't hold back, it shows you everything. And when life shows you everything, you see that it's as if reality is not hiding things from you. You are hiding something from yourself by postulating that you are posted to ideology or to the ideas that you have. A free man never had to try to be free, never had to think about freedom in that way. A free man knew he was free, and so his walk communicated it. And so you get first the excitement of a teacher, and you look at your life and you're like, oh, I could say so many things to people. But then you're like, how long would I be saying to people? And you realize you don't want to be a teacher that is just acting, because then you're not a teacher. You are an actor who is uncertain of even the realms you stand. And so our teachers need to be people who have smiled at life in many ways, have gazed at it in many depths. And so when they are confronted with a situation, they close their eyes, smile, breathe, and very slowly feel what must be done. Because many teachers or many people, they do not, in a sense, understand their feelings, and so they think they're only thinkers. And when you're a thinker and you ignore the feeler, you would see that the thinker is limiting his own realm. And in a sense, it's in a sense how the design of the relationship of language is made. So in a sense, that flip in the start and finish line is as simple as you looking in the mirror to realize you were always where you are. So regardless of the multiple way a projection can be projected, it is the simplest truth of your reality that will lead you to greater understanding, because simplicity travels light. Complexity is very heavy. What that means is that visualize the old guy who never really listened to the youth. and visualize to the youth who never listened to his elders. These are two people who are limiting their aspects of knowledge and experience. Communication is sharing experience. So similar to what the internet is doing for many computers and many terminals, you will see communication is building greater bridges between man and reality. So you need to see that what is the best way you can increase your quality of communication. And so you will suddenly look at the same intensity, look with the same intensity as the riders of the abyss, or riders to the abyss. You see the ride you're on, and you get a sense of faith that is not originating from this physical dimension, because you have known yourself before you can forget who you are. So you see, forgetfulness is a limitation until you remember. And when you remember, that limitation becomes a very active tool. So in other words, once you clearly remember a memory, you have a good story to tell. But if there's parts of that memory that are vague, you don't have the certainty to communicate, for example, a good story. So it is very important that you adjust your sensitivity in how real you find things, and in a sense, find that your allowance to be a greater expression is all that is required to be observed within the moment. Observance doesn't require anything. You don't have to go to school for it. You just have to be still, be silent, and then noise will find new meaning, and movement will find new meaning. And in a simple method, you will also see the sprouting being that man is. We are developing and we're moving towards greater consciousness. So the minute you acknowledge your greatness, worlds will open up to you. But if your greatness is not real for you, if you're not sincere, if there hasn't been a moment where your emotions have gone to their peak, to then be silent instantaneously, you will see that you are not, in a sense, refreshed. And so your truths are satisfying when you become their most direct experience. When you see that you are the experience of one individual in this plane, in this world, you recognize that to know more when you are an individual is to know through involvement. So many people, because they do not have faith in their moment innately at times based on their conditioning, I mean, everyone does, that's how you're kept here. So an aspect of you is keeping yourself pristine, untouched. An aspect of yourself is touching life and everything else, or touching form. So once you recognize this, you see that in your most deepest ideas, or in a sense, you will see every memory you have is like a gift that was given to you by life, through the experiences that you went through. And this gift is one that is showing you that once you look at the imagery of your design, you cannot be hindered in greater awareness of the design. You will simply instantly get to see who you really are the moment you choose. When in a sense, reality, or in a sense, let's say Christ said, ask and you shall receive. Many people see that in a very similar law of attraction way. But law of attraction is simply a step for you. It is one staircase. In essence, what is actually happening is that the reason you ask and you receive, you shall receive, is because it's a self-communication. And so it will go completely heard. An aspect of your collective consciousness will immediately be the thing you need here the minute you realize that the individual is part of the collective. And this is not through ideology. So you're not joining a group, it's not a Facebook group. It's simply, it's not a cult, it's not bound by ideology. It's just like we're using the simplest ideas to jump into the most complex experiences. And that's really what the pilot of consciousness is doing. He's being the pillar of simplicity that keeps the most complex aspects of our world present. You see, when man's consciousness develops, there comes invitation of energy to express in new ways. So that is why we are simply even seeing evolution, because there's a constant introduction of new energy into the spiral, let's say, sphere of the spiraling apple of this sector of the universe, I like to say this universe is designed like an apple, because the minute we can use that metaphor properly, all scientists will smile. So knowing yourself in deeper ways must begin by riding into the abyss. You will see that reality cannot keep you lost for too long. You will begin finding things out because you will suddenly increase the intensity. So many people who feel their life hasn't started or your life's miserable suffering, oh my God, you're simply just tuning into the intensity of your physical experience, but without a sense of escapism and a more deep longing to existentially confront who you are and to really see what you are. Through that method of approach, you will see that physicality is only one corner of a much vaster room, of the palace of mind, of reality you're in, of conception you're in. Because there have been stories where the Buddha, for example, in one of his, he was sitting by the tree and in his deep meditation and his search for truth, in his process, he sees that there's an army of darkness, or all the negative archetypes in his mind, just in a sense shooting arrows back at him. And when they shoot arrows, Buddha in an instant changes those black arrows into lotus flowers, because he is such basking in the knowing of his existential possibility as a collective being. Because when you become aware of that, you will see that illusion and the temporal reality has never figured it out. So what that means is that you look at everybody and you suddenly realize why Terence McKenna was saying nobody knows enough to worry. Because you begin to see that psychology is its own problem at first. But once it gets to learn to look at itself in more deeper ways, it realizes that all problems fade with your existential allowance to be comfortable where you are. You have allowed yourself, maybe indirectly based on your conditioning, to be uncomfortable, to be miserable, to be someone who life is pushing around in ways which you don't like it. But in an instant, you too hold the ability to be comfortable, to tell life, I am ready for a greater life, and in a sense walk into that knowing. It is important. We need action. We need your awareness to emotions immediately. We need you to get engaged in your life, and you know those synchronicities you've been seeing, those number alignments, those feelings that you should be there, you should do there. Well, that is a part of you boiling up. That is a part of you heating up, telling you that now it is time to engage. Now it is time to land new energies, new concepts. Man might find that he can't do much, but mentally your mind is everywhere. Your race is not just here, you're racing all over the cosmos. That is the nature of mind, that is the nature of clarity. It is an integrative view. So the minute you discover your integrative view, your vision has gone to the end of the cosmos and back to realize that it always began where it ended. So you will see that the nature of reality is one where you are required at many points and in a very simultaneous way to acknowledge many beginning and ends at the same time. So what that means is, like right now, you have one story of idea of who you are. You're like, for example, my name is Bob, I do this and whatnot, you know? However, if Bob recognized how Bob was even being conceived in reality, he would look at the nature of what he's looking at, and he will see that his eyes transform. And so when the nature of your eyes transform, that is your intelligence being reintroduced to you. It is a huge phenomena when a man gets to this level. And so you will see that many people have poetically said, it's your heart intelligence, you know, because love is the only thing you begin seeing after some point. Because love is what's keeping together. The essence of a connected universe is simply that there was a care for intelligence to look at something. So that is the love. That is the existential presence of man, when he realizes that the beauty of the branches or trees are within also his own design, when he looks at the deeper roots that are present within our sun. Because all great men have vision, and all great forms also are part of great vision. So you will see that the leader that you are to be is not an immediate association, but who you will be is a man who knows your moment. And so know your moment well. There will also be times before you really become interested in self-awareness where you will see that you don't want to dive into the unknown. You don't want to go into the void. You want to be who you are right now still. and that is fine. Not everyone is meant to, in a sense, be suddenly immersed into huge, deep existential questions. But in a sense, you need to be aware of it. So if you're at least not doing something, be aware of it first, understand it, and then choose not to do it. Because it would be as if like you're searching for a vending machine, and I know where one is, but your building might be too far for your preference to go. So this route might not be your preference. But know that in an instant of your knowing, your reality can change. And so you would feel as if you are being, when you thought you were going to be so late, you never could be late. Because time and space have just moved from their seat. Direct experience is truly the beacon that will show man who he is. Because you cannot ignore the quality of experience if it's a sensitive idea. So in other words, in chaos theory, we see that a sensitive initial, let's say, stimulus or something affects the whole system how it needs to be. And so we see that could a butterfly have caused that hurricane or a tornado or whatnot, you know? So you see that it's not that we were really looking for the cause of the butterfly effect, but we are simply seeing that we are part of that cause. And so what that means is that one little movement can change your thoughts. So that's why you in a sense suddenly see the way you know yourself is changing every day. Because you don't know, one little thing, one leaf falling, if you become sensitive to it, it is shifting realities in your abstract, let's say subconscious, in your mind. Every little thing, every movement, and that creates bliss because you would suddenly see you can walk around and leaves moving because you're deep, your gaze is so deep, you would suddenly see every movement is as if you get the same experience of it within you. So what that means is that the movement of nature begins to become the movement of your nature. And in that awareness, you cannot ignore life. So you cannot be too selfish. You're humble because you're a being who is constantly transforming. And so that humility is allowing you to see the other side of where you, in a sense, thought you were stuck in. You know? Consciousness needs a mirror to see itself. So if you want to know whether you are just a physical thing or not a physical thing, you need to really be self-reflective. You need to sit down and observe. So do not seek a path without sincerity to really explore your sense of honest vision, your sense of what you're seeing, your sense of clarity. And you would really enjoy the ride along. You will see that the void will turn into not just your source of I don't knows, but also the source of your greatest knowing. So in that space where you have acknowledged all of your reality and you're like, this is immensely beautiful. What's next? What's really next is actually an acknowledgement beyond concept. So that is where human consciousness and self-awareness is heading. You are transitioning in the sense that many selves are constantly understanding them through one self. So if I was to, let's say, draw two triangles, I would see that once these two triangles are present within one another, it's as if from the top point, everything is expanding infinitely in one direction, and from another point, everything is infinitely expanding into another direction. And so what I'm really saying here is that visualize the top of the first triangle going to the line, and then the other way, notice the other triangle, the top of it going to the other part of the line. You would see perhaps the beauty in the shapes such as that found in the Star of David, you know. So geometry, in other words, triangles have really opened doors by being catalysts in a way. However, there are also more. To introduce man to his greater awareness, the void will take you into a more dynamic state of being. And so as you are riding into your next moment, you will see that it is the intensity of the awareness you have to your ride that will really in a sense, move your joy. So joy is not just thinking that you're just sitting around and being happy. Joy is your natural involvement in life. You want happiness, just seek natural involvement. Let it naturally happen. Just be calm, walk gracefully, compassionately. The Buddha said had to have the intensity of just imagine holding a flower in your hand. And so if you maintain physical reality with the calmness as if there's a very gentle flower, in your hand, you're holding it very gently and you're walking, that state of being is perfect for deep thought. And deep thought is actually perfect any moment. I mean, dive into your own depths any moment. Learn from yourself every day. In other words, you might go to school and you might have to learn there a few hours, but yourself, you are day one, begin. They forgot to tell you. The day you were born, you are since then, you need to be learning from yourself, and in a sense you have. You just need to remember it. You just need to see how, in what other sense of view you've been observing yourself. And so, to kind of, in a sense, take all these ideas and to show you how the triangle symbology is important. So pretty much, it's that shape that looks like Star of David and there's two triangles, right? And I'm just saying, imagine from one point of the top triangle, there's two arrows moving towards the line of that triangle, and then there's on the other one, there's another triangle from that point moving up, So what I really mean is that your life is kind of in this multidimensional way where it's parallel, so it's untouched. So it's as if this reality is in one sense of conception of dimension untouched. So as if we are having an experience of more than one sense of being, and then on another aspect we're having an experience of an individual thing. So it's as if one part of us is moving into an infinite spectrum of form, and another aspect of us is moving into an infinite spectrum of, let's say, formlessness. And so as these two are manifesting in the same way, we find the beauty in the toroidal field and how this whole movement encompasses how if you begin acknowledging the intelligence of man collectively, your individuality always knows what to do. It is simply how you are alive to your observance that is important. And I hope when you ride to the abyss, you really see that you are seeking your clarity. So be honest with yourself, be sincere, and be so sincere, so don't waste your time. Don't sit down and be like, okay, I'm trying to look for happiness. No, there are deeper questions you might be looking for. Happiness is not real in the sense that you think, because happiness is an idea which you have your own unique imagery. Because even different people have different meanings of happiness. So happiness is how you're interpreting a unique concept which everyone else also likes to interpret too. And so we present it in our culture and society and media as the most significant thing. Happiness is an idea, but to be in a very compassionate, graceful, and efficient and capable state of being is a different thing. That is not bound to ideology because the intention is an existential intention. An existential intention means that you cannot touch it because nature is never late. It comes when it comes. The moment is the moment. And you will see that you as an observer of life begin appreciating how things are rather than how you are interpreting how things are. And there's a beauty and elegance in that because you're tapped into more of a collective sense of consciousness in which you're clear in your knowing and you walk with the beauty of the simplicity of your breath. The only beacon you need for this dimension. And a smile too. Because you will see that in the abstractions of your mind have the potential to instantly dissolve into an infinite spectrum or into just one sense of just innate knowing. It is all present there because you are a very, very interesting being. The human form is more than human information. Is more than how the human body is formed. In other words, your essence is deeper, and so do not be convinced of your temporal nature. When you observe your temporal nature, reality dances in new ways. Remember, it is important to cultivate an appreciation and gratefulness for your present moment by simply being it, being in there without an interpretation, without a thought, without that you're looking at something, and just comfortably being there. Through that simple act, you will be your greater allowance. And so you will find that transcendent integrative view that has kept all you need to know together for you. And so could there be a better self-communication? Remember yourself, for when you ride into the abyss, you are never alone. Much blessings and namaste.